I mean, while we wait for participants to come on, uh, who do we have? Well, you know, I'm Irwin. Hacker Hostel, who's with you guys?
I'm sorry, go again, Irwin.
Just checking who's here. I see we have Hacker Hostel, Earl, and Keith. Hacker Hostel, who is with you guys?
Just Aqua.
All right, cool. And how has things been going with the teams and the students and their building?
Well, we haven't actually taken a look at any code yet.
Yeah.
We've just been walking them through what it would look like were they to begin building a solution, and like what they should look for in building solutions. So like we're taking them through product market fit. We're taking them through more of the innovation and entrepreneurship side of things, so
Right.
that they actually solve for a practical solution.
And are the teams well balanced, or is it? And by that I mean, is it only engineers on teams, or are there completely non-engineering, maybe product development or analyst type people on the teams?
I think there's a few analysts available on each team from what I can see,
Okay.
but I wouldn't put it past Keith and Earl to tell me that they're both analysts and engineers.
Right. So, well, Keith and Earl, are you guys from teams or lecturers or mentors?
Yes, to which question, Earl?
Oh, you're on the same team.
Okay.
Very cool. What team is that, guys?
Our team is doing the e-appointment problem statement,
Okay.
and we have a combination of analysts and programmers primarily.
Okay.
Have one person who is also familiar with project management. But
Right.
between us, among us, we have I think pretty much most of the balanced talents that a team would
Right.
require.
Also, you guys are Costard, as in Costard, just down the road from Telios?
That is correct. Yes.
Oh, that's
On
cool.
in Port of Spain. Yes.
Nice. So, I mean, I guess you should know by now, Telios' head office is at the top of the street, which is just north of Costard.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
All right, cool, man. All right, well, I see it's 11 o'clock. This is the last session of this type, right, Hacker Hostel?
Correct. This is the last session. This is the last workshop,
Yeah,
purposefully designed as such because we wanted to spend the last 3 weeks, like I said, taking the guys through what the requirements for solving a problem would look like by using an innovation and entrepreneurship curriculum.
right.
So this is the last session.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to be contributing here. I'm, of course, the fourth Telios presenter. I know Keisha would have started us off with QA and testing, and in fact, we would have put up additional content on QA and testing, springing off of Keisha's presentation. That's Keisha Mark Peters. It's on our Telios Code Jam channel on YouTube. And then Ryan Sripat came along and he presented on remote work, because we do have instances where our team members may work from home or work out of country and connect into the office. And recently, Darren Wickham would have presented on agile aspects of agile development. And I'm hoping that those things were enriching and useful for the participants. I'm going to present today on technical interviews. So let me get my presentation started and let me share my screen. So you should be seeing a presentation titled The Technical Interview. And I'm saying we're going to use what we look for at Telios as a guide. And if we're all seeing fine, I'll move on. All right. So we're at Telius. I'm at Telius. My name is Irwin Williams, and Telius, we're a software services and solutions company. That means we build software, we provide software services, and we develop solutions across a number of industries, and we've done so for a long time. Telius started back in 1997, and since then we found ourselves building a lot of platforms. We have built a pretty robust messaging platform. It's called Message Central. And since then, we've built QuickWorks. We've also built a number of custom applications and web applications. Telios' tagline is, we write software to run the world. And so we started in Trinidad, but when we started with a notion that from this place, we can build solutions that are relevant to the world, and we build with that in mind. So we build with scale and with meeting needs across a wide number of concerns in mind, which is probably why we find ourselves building platforms and then building applications on top of those platforms. There are challenges to this, but we're driven by that. We come here for the challenge every day, and of course, when you're talking interviews, you're looking for similarly minded people. You're here today in this talk about technical interviews, but I will widen the scope a bit to talk about interviewing in general. And though I'll be talking about Telios, some of these principles apply to any company you might interview at. And in fact, at some points, I will contrast how things have worked out here at Telios as compared to some of the larger companies in this space. I will also say, because this is not exhaustive, I'm open to questions or feedback and even insights that you might have about other aspects of the interviewing and technical interviewing process that you think may be relevant to what we're sharing today. So at Telios, we have an interview process that generally is 2 interviews, to be honest, because we're a small firm, and we don't really want to waste too much time. So one of our interviews focuses on technical skills. There might be a phone interview before the first one, and we tend to focus on your ability to do, the level of competence you can bring to the table, and then we may have a second interview that focuses on fit and culture and Telios' philosophy. Both interviews tend to be comprised of maybe 3 or 4 interviewers on the Telios side, bringing different dimensions of consideration to the particular focus of the interview. So I want to actually use a job description we just sort of finished. We're going to publish it maybe later today. That really gives us a way to think and contextualize the interview and, of course, the technical interview. So I'm going to just walk through aspects of this job description, and we'll use that as an anchor point for how, therefore, a candidate should be thinking about presenting themselves when it comes to the interview. So, wanted, software engineer. So we will start off, in our job description, we start off by saying, by kind of waving a flag for who you might be as a potential candidate. You've made more than a hello world. Keith or Earl, you guys have been writing code for any period of time, or are you new to development?
We've been writing for a while. We're actually in the final year in both cases of our programs.
Right. Nice. So you've done more than a hello world. And in fact, in our job description, we're saying you expect and you're good with change. You write software in such a way that change, when it happens, doesn't destroy everything, but you can flow with it. You can be flexible. I mean, to some degree, you understand how important empathy is. You have made and actually deployed software somewhere that someone has actually used, and you survived the customer saying what they had to say about what you built. And of course, if you are interested in engaging in a technical interview, because you can't wait to build more technical stuff, do more engineering. So you know software. And in fact, you may have qualified for one of these examples. You build websites in Angular or React or Vue or one of the popular front-end frameworks. You probably use some CSS3, and you built a back-end API. So using this to kind of frame what the interview is based on, you've built Windows applications maybe, or you've actually used cloud services from Azure or AWS or Google or somebody else, but you understand what cloud services are, and you may have built native web applications. In the way you frame this sort of language, what we are trying to do is say you've built meaningful solutions. And we also want to leave it open because there may be a mix of things. For example, someone may have built a Windows application that talks a backend API living on a web server somewhere, or they built a website that uses cloud services, or a native application most likely will be using some set of cloud APIs and services to get things done. You've done that, and that gives the candidate a sense of deep understanding, really, around what we'll be talking about in a given interview. And then, of course, we share what you'll do. So you're going to an interview, you need to know what the job entail. And so this one says you'll work in Azure, .NET, Microsoft.NET, that is, JavaScript, TypeScript, and a bunch of technologies that we use day to day to build solutions at Telios. And what will we build? Well, I did mention this at the start. I wanted to leave it here. Telios has a number of platforms. I did say QuickWorks is one of them. It's a low-code solution that lets even non-developers really build solutions that can be published and provide software services to their clients. PowerWorks is an example of one of those solutions that we published, and it focuses on power co-ops in the States. I mentioned Message Central. It's a high-volume SMS-based platform that is used for delivering many, many messages on a daily basis, in the thousands, and so across a given month, we probably would send millions of messages. And in fact, you may build some brand new platform you haven't thought about. So you're hearing this, and so when you think about technical interviews, you really need to think about what the interview is for, what the job is for. And so we then go into who you'll work with. We have a broad range of rules that we try to fill to ensure software is built properly. In fact, when we started this call, I was just talking to Hacker Hostile and the participants on the call about the type of teams, the composition of their teams. And we think good software is built with a broad range. And so you have to expect you'll work with a broad range of roles and people. We think you'll care because you want to build software that is amazing, that meets needs, that helps us achieve our mission of writing software to run the world. So that's a job description. That's to kind of contextualize what the interviews are about. So let's talk about interviews. So actually I mentioned 2 interviews, but to be honest, there's a hidden one, the one that comes before that, and one I'm calling interview 0. And interview 0 really focuses on your expression of passion with some evidence, and maybe people who recommend you based on what you've done. So when I say passion, I really mean that thing that makes you get up and write code. There's a curiosity you might have about code, and where you go to explore that curiosity. Keith or Earl, you guys use Stack Overflow?
Just for research purposes, we have not actually contributed to it, but yes, we're familiar with it.
I dig that response a lot, Keith. I like it a lot because one, it's honest, we use it. I feel like, to be honest, for many developers, Stack Overflow is the front door of their development activity, myself included. If I am writing to an API, or I'm doing using some platform, during the course of writing that code, I may be investigating queries that Stack Overflow has the answers for. What I do like is that while preparing, if you notice the timestamp on that tweet, it's the 9th of April, today is the 12th. The Stack Overflow developer survey has come out, and so it really shows some considerations for how developers work. So in my mind, Stack Overflow is a really good representation of community and, in fact, passion, because if you're contributing to Stack Overflow either by asking questions or answering questions, you're not doing it because you're told to, or because you have to, or you shouldn't. You're doing it because, well, someone asks a question and you have an answer, and out of you bubbles a desire to help that person. And I share a little bit of my profile because I think Stack Overflow celebrated a significant anniversary last year. And in celebrating it, I was just looking at my profile and realized that there's a thing they measure called impact. So the number of people that you reach as a result of simply expressing your passion. And mine was like just under 1 million last year. So right now it's as a flat 1 million people, or about 1 million people reached by asking questions or answering questions on Stack Overflow, which is, it's nice. It gives a real sense of delight to me that me here in Trinidad and Tobago, of just over 1 million, 1.3 million citizens, have been able to impact or reach 1 million people with questions in Stack Overflow. I mostly have gone to Stack Overflow to read. I've asked a lot of questions. And because there's a particular thing about quality questions in Stack Overflow, it talks again to taking time to frame your queries and frame your challenges in a way that somebody could benefit from the questions you have. So part of interview zero is passion. But beyond passion is also evidence. And so I spend a lot of time on Twitter, guys. And you'll hear a little later on. I also saw this tweet. The one on the left says, it shows an image of a awkward looking dude, and it talks about contributing to open source. Interview zero, which happens before, that's just you living your life. Interview zero it really focuses on what you've done up till the interview, before you sent in your reply to the job description. And I really do like what the reply, so the guy, David Humphrey, he replied to what the first tweet said. There was real encouragement that he pushes towards his students to contribute to open source and get past that awkwardness. So in fact, exploring a passion might at first start off awkward because you don't know what to do, you don't know who to talk to, you don't know if what you're saying is valid or not. And quite honestly, you feel like you might be wasting your time and their time. But here you have a lecturer saying, listen, it's important you get in. That's the evidence. Stack Overflow is evidence, contributing to open source is evidence. That's part of your interview zero. And of course, moving away from that, you then need to make sure your resume matches the job you're going after, which is general tips for writing resumes. Excuse me. So be mindful of the fact that you're already being interviewed by the work you do going forward in terms of how to think about the technical interview. Mentorship is so important. And to be honest, I've conducted quite a number of these technical interviews here at Telius. And over the last few years, it feels like our very strong candidates have come with good recommendations, not written recommendations, but recommendations from living people, from people who I could give a call to and say, yeah, this guy is really, they've done really good work, or they demonstrated it in my class or in my project on the side. Or it's important that you develop your mentors. So spending time in interview zero, as I'm calling it, spending time in interview zero, looking for mentors and people for whom you could build strong relationships and build good stuff with is important. And this note here in the bottom, last point, that mentors don't have to be in the same school with you. So you might be in COSTAT and your mentor might be a lecturer in UE or a researcher in UE. Or you might be in UE and your mentor is a professional operating out of some company. They might even be in the same field as you. So you might be doing computer engineering and your mentor is someone in finance who uses software in a meaningful way that you think could help. And this one may be very, very new for you guys. Your mentor might be someone on Twitter or Facebook. In a meaningful way, they're helping you understand how to treat with and deal with the challenges of building your expertise. All this, and then when you come to an interview, you come with this notion that I've come with a good recommendation. I've demonstrated to someone who understands what it means to write good code or build good solutions. And that's someone just you've met online. You met in an open source context because you started to contribute to repositories and people got to know your name. excuse me, and they, in getting to know you, could validate that when you come to do work, you do good work. So seek out mentors, follow the people who build things on Twitter. You might go to an open source repository. And in fact, we live in an interesting time. Our field is such that many of the luminaries shaping the field of computer science and information technology and software engineering are still alive, and they're online, they're tweeting, or they're contributing to repositories. They are actively responding to issues that may be happening. It's as if, so it's one thing to have access to the person who wrote the textbook that they're using. That's cool. But oftentimes, textbooks are written based on work that other people have done. And so you have access to the people upon whose lives the textbooks are based. You have access to the people whose, it's like, so I used to read about Dijkstra. You guys know Dijkstra is, right? You should know Dijkstra's algorithms. And I'm hoping you do. I used to read about it, not realizing, wait now, the guy whose algorithms I'm using is still alive. And if you do artificial intelligence, well, I don't think he's alive anymore, but at the point in time, maybe. It may be you're doing internet technologies, you're doing web technologies, and the guy who proposed and created the web, as we know it, is still alive, which is amazing stuff. Excuse me. So, I have a really weird cough. I'm sorry, guys. So, look for your mentors, and you'll be surprised to see who is willing to help you develop your skills, develop your talents, and prepare you for technical interviews. So, on these interviews, just be clear. Technical interviews are very widely across industry, and even within our industry. And the kind of interview you prepare for could be very different based on the size of the company, the job you're preparing for, and the type of candidate. Some interviews, for example, may be focused on DevOps, and so what you may look for there is very similar to look for someone who's working on developing algorithms related to AI. And so knowing that means you have to do your research. There is no one advice to rule all interviews. There's no one size fits all. You have to do your research. You have to spend time thinking about who you're going to talk to and what they need to hear. And then, of course, execute well when it comes to interviewing. Give me one moment, please. Yeah, there you go. So, when we talk technical interviews, what do I mean? At Telios in particular, when we're having interviews, we typically talk thinking and looking into how you reason around architecture, what you've built, technology, what you've built with, and challenges, maybe who you built with, what you faced, and how you dealt with the problems you met. So when we say architecture, we mean doing your composition of a solution. How do you think about it? What does design look like for you? When you're coming to a technical interview, of course, you have prepared your resume. You have listed the projects you've worked on and what was your contribution to those projects if you worked in a team. And then, of course, in the interview, we want to work through with you. How did you do what you did? How did the thing work out? What were you going after? Was it relevant? So you're coming to talk through the things you've built. I did mention before that you should be able to demonstrate evidence of your passion. It might be in Stack Overflow, it might be in GitHub, maybe in some of the school project. You have to come with that. If you can come with source code, we don't mind. We'll talk through it with you. At Telios, we don't really do whiteboarding to the point where you have to come up with brand new algorithms or recall algorithms from scratch. Other companies may do that, and they may have their reasons, but we don't find a lot of mileage from that. Instead, we found hearing how you think through your choices and what made you arrive where you arrived is beneficial to us, to allow us to have a meaningful dialogue with you. And in fact, we like to hear how you have changed as a result of what you've built. It's almost as if by discovering how to build something well, you've actually taught yourself how to build things well. And so we want to hear that from you. That's at Telios. In terms of technology, for some reason, when thinking about what you've used, so maybe PHP or .NET or Python, Keith or Earl, what language do you guys code in? If you guys are developers. While I wait for them,
Sorry, I've done all of those, yes, except Ruby.
Except which one?
Except Ruby.
Okay. So we would like to hear what was your if we were talking in an interview, we'd like to hear what was your experience across those technologies you used? Why choose one for a given project and then the other? What were some of the pains, and of course, what you enjoyed while building? It kind of ties into the question on passion, because we want to know that you are able to make a discerning choice around technology. And if not so, if you recovered from that choice, perhaps by learning how to use technology a bit with more nuance than before, we want to hear your story as it relates to technologies you've engaged with, because we have those decisions to make. We need to hear that, you need to know that you can think in a way that benefits the solution you're building, because you understand the importance of thinking through the technology choices. And from there, of course, we want to hear your challenges. So at Telios, technical interviews are they're not meant to be places where you come and you're stressed out because you had to go prepare by revising all the algorithms you've ever heard of, or come to answer magic questions. We're not invested in that at all. Instead, we want you to know we're looking for a fit based on passion and execution and the time you spent building your skill. But we do know that there are challenges. So in a technical interview, be prepared to talk about how you deal with team. And it goes beyond, for example, saying you use source control. It talks about the strategies you've had. It talks about dealing with how you communicate, how you express the need for help when you're dealing with issues you've encountered, how you dealt with some of the quote-unquote softer issues. And in fact, we like to hear sometimes when a project didn't work. So I know that's a bit strange, because resumes tend to be this this source of shine, this look at how good I am in all these areas, and you wouldn't really put, and I didn't do well in this particular thing on a resume, and that's okay, you can keep doing that. But when it comes to the interview, you want to hear about the time you didn't do well and what were the factors that led to that. Because failure is a part of our learning process. Failure is a part of exploration. So if it is that you come to us and you can't actually say, well, I've never failed in anything. Everything I've done, I've been successful at. One, we won't believe you. And two, we go away thinking you think the risk of exploration is too great. And therefore, for what we do at Telios, remember, we build platforms. We may find ourselves exploring very new technology to build what we're trying to build. If it is that you are unable to explore and find new ways and sometimes fail along the path, then you won't be a good fit for us and maybe for many other companies. And so before I conclude, I just want to point out that all technical interviews aren't the same, and you need to go prepared, because sometimes terrible things happen at technical interviews. People may be asking questions that actually just are meant to stress you out, because they want to see how you handle stress. They may ask you irrelevant questions, and you simply need to be ready to know, hey, what is the purpose of this question? What are they trying to do here? And the answer may be that they just want to ask you questions because they haven't thought through what they need to get from you. It may be that the job description wasn't clear, or the people interviewing you weren't clear on what they needed to hear from you. And so the interview itself flows all over the place. These are some areas of how you could set yourself up for success by knowing that these things might happen. It might be that a technical interview, in preparation for it, the company requires that you fix some software that takes you hours to spend time fixing. So they burden you with a lot. And of course, it may just be thought less in terms of the execution. So these are things to be mindful for. And so it's very important that you do your preparation, do your research, you research the company, you research previous interviews, and maybe even people working there or who used to work there, to hear their perspectives. If you've selected a company to work at, hopefully it's because you were deliberate and you want to engage them, you want to build with them. And so if that is the case, you need to do your own research to understand what that company looks for when it comes to technical interviews. For us at Telios, as I said, we look for passion, evidence, and mentorship or recommenders, like people who recommend you. And we push that into the interview through the questions we ask. So I'm hoping this gave you a nice scan of what we do and what we look for at Telios when it comes to technical interviews, and gives you a sense of how the industry may be positioned. But there's a lot more you could do to explore that. There are books on it. There's a really good one on handling the technical interview. You could search that up and use it to help you get clarity on how to prepare for these things. I'm on Twitter at iStar. At Telios, I am the Chief Software Engineer, and you can reach me via that email address up there. Any questions from you on the call?
My first question would be and I'm speaking here for myself, relatively inexperienced in the programming field. I've done work with hardware before, but in programming, I'm relatively inexperienced. How would you recommend that I go about setting myself up to be in place for, let's say, an interview like this, or even put any kind of position like this in the first place?
So, of course, you would need to be doing that's a really good question, Keith. You need to be doing your due diligence around preparing for understanding. You need to ensure you've enrolled in appropriate courses. You found it sometimes takes a while to know which way to begin learning of technology. And let's assume you've done that already. So you've already picked the path you'll take. It might be web development, or you're doing a degree that covers a lot of areas inside of computer science or IT. In terms of preparing for the interview, even if you are fairly new, because of the state of our field, it doesn't excuse you from discovering where the field is at in a number of ways. You can be watching the media, reading particular tech news, and following up and being awkward on the technologies that you've learned. So, for example, if you did Python in school and maybe you did Python 2.7, you should find yourself knowing, oh, how has Python changed? How is it growing? What's happening in Python? It's at version 3 now. Where is that relevant? What's it used for? And be able to, not just from a textbook perspective, say Python is good for these things, but from a real life perspective, there are applications built with Python, and here they are. Because you've not just interacted with them, you've looked at the code because you went to an open source repository on GitHub, for example, you've checked it out, you've built and compiled, you've made changes, you've seen the effect of changes. Essentially, you can think of how to prepare for roles like this as a version of depth first search. I think you guys are familiar with that in algorithms, but for the technologies you've started to learn. So for any tech you started to learn, I'd advise spend time going more deeply than the textbook prescribes by exercising your curiosity. I'll tell you for sure, one of the things we look for is self-driven activity, especially for candidates now coming out of school. What have you done on your own, or done not because school mandated it, but simply because you had questions and you had ideas about what could be done? It might be full projects, or it might be contributions to existing projects. It might be that you try to solve a problem in your space, or someone presented problems to you. You use the skills you gain to solve. That self-driven aspect to our work really is useful to persons now coming out of school or probably transitioning from one field into this area.
Okay, thank you very much. My other question would be, what would you say to, I mean, I've noticed over time, probably less so now, but I've noticed in my history of looking at job descriptions, especially in the IT sector, sometimes you see these grand lists of, you wonder if any one person can actually know all of those things. So, for example, you might be asked to be familiar with programming. You also need to be familiar with network administration. You also need to be familiar with security and
Right.
switching, and a whole laundry list. And you
Yes.
wonder how would you respond to or guide someone looking at those kinds of job descriptions out there.
So I know where you're coming from because I've seen a few of those, and sometimes the persons writing the job descriptions aren't the people who would be working with or working in the areas the descriptions are a part of. In other words, they just know, you know what, I have a need for these things, or a department tells me they need these particular rules, and so I'm going to put them all together in a job description and put it out, see who replies. You have to be careful about those in particular because the less thought applied to creating a job description is more frustrating the interview process will be for you. Unfortunately, there are quite a few of those. And so what I would say is if you are interested still in going after one of those descriptions that essentially require you to know the entire stack from the bare metal all the way up to the application layer and beyond, into with deep understanding, be careful. Be able to demonstrate. You speak to a particular layer, and I'm using the analogy of the TCP/IP stack to talk about the fact that there's a reason why they did that in a layered way, because there's something called developing expertise in one particular area. It doesn't mean that you should be so focused on one technology or one layer that you don't understand the importance of the others. But based on what you said, it sounds as if some job descriptions require you to be an expert in every area, which is not reasonable. Be able to understand what you understand. Let's say, for example, is front-end development, which is a popular thing I see these days. But not because you understand front-end means you can't provision a database, or you don't understand the need, how to ensure your database is secured on the internet, or you don't understand why APIs need to have a particular set of features to them. It sometimes feels unreasonable because you might say to yourself, well, I'm a front-end developer. All I need to know is the front end. But that's not how it works in real life. In real life, you need to know a little bit more than what might be your core area. And to understand what your core area is, recognize where in a given job description, the things they ask for match your core area. And then within reason, be able to recognize where, it makes sense for me to have some sense of what security is. Because then if I simply understood how to build a form, but didn't understand the importance of both client-side and server-side validation, then I'd be exposing someone to undue risk. So sometimes you need to be able to, you need to know what your core skill area is, but then you also need to be able to be flexible around discovering what layers you are building your work on top of.
Okay, I appreciated that response. Again, it is something that I have been personally a little bit mindful of, and quite honestly, with some of those very broad descriptions, I usually look at them and quite honestly, for the most part, I ignore them.
Yes. Okay. If there are any more questions, Keith? If there are no more questions.
I am good for now. I'm not sure if Earl wants to ask any questions. I've been hogging the time all this time.
Right. Okay, well, if not, as I said, my contact infos are there. You can reach out to me on those media. and we can talk more about this or just general questions on tech and what we do at Telius. Thank you very much for your time. Let me just say I'm really glad for what HackTT is doing and how they are presenting this place for young innovators to express solutions that are needed in government. And of course, Hacker I'm glad for the role you guys are playing that really helps prepare the participants to bring valuable solutions to the marketplace.
Yeah, and I mean that's what it's about. We believe in a market-driven approach to building solutions, especially solutions that are going to be serving very specific customers. I'm sure that is the approach that Telius takes as well, and it's been great working with you guys and the HackTT team. To help to bring this vision to reality. So we have a couple more months to go, guys. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We will be in touch with you via email and other means to follow up as to next steps. So that being said, Irwin, if you don't have anything else to go over, I think it's safe to say that we can wrap this up and call this a day.
Yes, thank you very much, guys.
Perfect. So thanks, everybody. Take care. We will be in touch.
Take care, guys.